Desert. In this administration, what we want to do is to reclaim the desert. What we want to do is to make that green wall an economic opportunity for looking at how we address energy solutions, how we empower people and the entrepreneurs there, how we bring business into it. That trees are not just trees for shade, but they're economic trees, and that there are livelihoods that will come from them. So taking a different look at what we do with that. At the same time, on climate change, some of the issues that we have to speak to will be about growing that low carbon economy. How do we emit less as we grow? Because if we don't put the preventive measures in today, they will certainly cost us more tomorrow. And so if we talk about industry, in my state, for instance, Gombe, we have a cement factory that is going to double in its capacity perhaps, yet they're going to use coal. So yes, what are the alternatives to it? Who's going to pay for it? Can we go cleaner? Is there a transition to renewables that can make that possible? And we have to think very strategically about that now. But what can we also do about the energy mix? And my colleague will talk about that shortly. Fossil fuels, what's the transition? What are the options for us? When we talk about the population that has to be seen to today and not tomorrow, we can think about the longer term investments, but in the shorter term, that mix we have to think about, from solar power, from wind, from hydro. And then perhaps an easier one, and I know one of our speakers spoke to it earlier, Nigeria can end gas flaring, and what are we doing to make that real by 2020 and the targets that we've set for ourselves. So in terms of climate change, everything that I've spoken about leads to jobs, leads to us actually addressing some of the issues that will reduce emissions and protect the environment. We do have huge challenges in terms of protecting our environment today, from oil pollution to industrial pollution to sanitation, which is a big part of this. Today we hear about how we can address that with many solutions. Again, with the oil pollution for us, how do we, after years of a protracted issue in the Niger Delta, the Ogoniland oil spills, how do we come to terms with that? And the cleanup that will begin shortly in the next few weeks is a challenge for us, but is one that is possible. Perhaps what the bigger challenge is how you stay clean after the cleanup. And so the speak about the diversification of the economy is important for young people. What are the alternatives, perhaps, to breaking pipelines, to getting involved in a life where there is no hope? How do we make that real? And I think speaking to young people, skill sets that they need, and joining the economy will be incredibly important when we deal with oil pollution. The deforestation is a very big issue. Again, we've spoken about the health side of this. For women in Nigeria who are having to use, the majority of poor women having to use firewood, and the implications on health. Yet we can have that transition to LPG. LPG will create more jobs. It will give a healthier life to women and to children. And so taking the opportunities from that to make that real. What will be clear, I mean, the result of all of this, we hope, will be the empowerment of people in the different ways that we articulate some of the programs that we have over the next 3 years. But I think one of the key issues that we will have to take up is partnerships. Partnerships within the sectors, and that's what we talk about, the multi-sector collaboration that strengthens us. But we also need to speak to the partnerships between the federal government and the state government. There are resources that are insufficient. But if we can agree a framework and how it is the sectors in Abuja that design their programs can reinforce the programs designed in Ogun State with the local governments, pulling in the same direction will make better use of the scarce resources that we have, more efficiency, and then we will get scale, because we won't be talking about federal pilot projects for a few Nigerians. We'll be talking about getting behind the Nigerians in every state in the country. So the partnerships with government at all tiers will be important. With the private sector will be key, but I think we need to redefine that partnership with the private sector. Embracing the private sector without considering the way in which we will turn around the core business concepts that you have, how you grow, your relationship with people, with the environment, and with those responsibilities is something we have to take on. And when we speak to waste to wealth and the programs we want to do, we want to start beginning to talk to the private sector, those that produce plastics. What's your obligation to trying to keep the environment clean, and how can you partner with government to make that happen in making sure that not only do we take the waste away, but how do we create the jobs while we're doing that. Our international partners are incredibly important to us. I think today one of the biggest benefits of this conference has been listening to a president from Colombia. When we framed the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Agenda, it was Colombia that first coined the phrase the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. But it was also Colombia that had the first framework that actually produced a focus on the working with their development around the Sustainable Development Agenda, but picking up 3 issues that were particularly important to them: the security issue, the inequality issue, and education. That was the thrust that the president then put, and I think this was a good example and helped us to get the framework that we got with the 17 goals. So sustainable development, keep them in mind, keep the goals as one that helps us, because they do talk about the partnerships and the role of the international community. Finally, let me just say that with respect to Ogun State and what we can do, there is a huge amount of partnering that we can, first of all, acknowledge that Ogun State is ahead of everyone else when they're integrating these 3 issues. It's not often that we see investments spoken about in this way. Often the environment is thought of as a side issue. It's not dead center, and I think you've shown here how that is possible and that we can't work without taking an integrated approach to sustainable development. His Excellency the Governor talked about the forests that you have here. It's an incredibly important part of carbon sequestration. It's important for us that we don't see the deforestation happening at the level at which it's happening. Not to say that we cannot better manage our forests, but we certainly shouldn't see them disappear, because that will be detrimental to both us and the economy. A cleaner and greener environment, we'd like to pick up partnerships with every state in the Federation, but I think in particular this is the state where the First Lady has shown the way in which to incorporate the environment in everything that we're doing. So in being clean and green is how do we put an end, for instance, to open defecation in every state by 2019. It's possible. We can partner with governments, we can partner with the private sector. It's something people take for granted in perhaps in other countries and the elite part of our nation, but the average Nigerian struggles with sanitation, and if we can find a way to deal with that over the next 3 years, we'll be laying foundations for a better and cleaner, healthier life. The other, as I said, is the waste to wealth. How can we partner with you on the recycling and to make sure that we don't have, by 2019, any of the plastic bags or the pure water or the bottles that are scattered around? And as my Minister of Water Resources said, colleague said earlier, how do we take the plastic bags away? Because as a herdsman himself, he's losing his cattle to the plastic that they eat and how they cause the death of many cattle as it goes. So let me just say that this is an incredible opportunity to integrate sustainable development, to see that the economy can be driven by making investments in environment, in climate change, ultimately in the lives of people, especially our young people and women. Thank you.
Many thanks to the Honorable Minister for really helping to contextualize the issue of the environment and really bring it home for the development agenda for this particular state, for Ogun State, and also acknowledging the fact that that environment is so critical to the development agenda and putting it front and center. I'd also like to commend the government for really putting this front and forward, because in fact the title of this panel is quite provocative, calling it is sustainable development a luxury or an imperative? I think we all on this panel think that it's an imperative, but we can have that conversation. But the Honorable Minister has really given us some food for thought in terms of how the environment is such a core part of our development agenda.